All right, I believe we are, in fact, recording. And so this is Dragging Up the Past episode, whatever the hell it is. It's issue,
79.
sure, it's issue number 121. And, and as always, my partner in crime here, Sir Jim. Howdy, Jim.
Hey, good evening, Brent.
Good evening. And just so folks know, if you hear random exclamations or operatic voices in the background, got Flash Gordon on in the background here.
Saved every one of us.
Yes, he did. He
Prince
did.
of the Impossible.
Savior of the universe. The wedding scene is actually getting ready to start, so it's towards the end of the movie here.
And anything that involves Brian Blessed is really something worth watching, so there you go.
Well, there's that. Anything that involves the Dale Arden is worth watching. So, you know. All right, so we're doing something. So Jim not only picked the issue for tonight, I have no idea what all. Well, I mean, I have a sense of what's in here just from reading the cover, but I have not looked through this ahead of time to get any clue whatsoever as to what's going on in here. So we have issue 121. And so I do want to make note that the $3.50 cover price is actually quite excellent. I could totally go for some $3.50 magazines these days, especially ones as packed as I expect this to be.
Yep. And first thing I want to do before we dive in is to say hello to Emeraldus, our fan. She's our number one fan, I think.
She might be our only fan.
I think she is. I'm saying that. But she actually made a specific comment, and I actually pulled up. She made a comment about the Vorpal sword, which we talked about in the last episodes.
Yes.
And I just want you to know that the Vorpal sword goes all the way back to first edition D&D. And the great debate in my day was what was better, a Vorpal sword or the Sword of Sharpness. But the thing that we all knew about the Vorpal sword was that if you were hitting with it and you rolled a natural 20...
Off with his head.
Off with his head. So
yes,
the Vorpal sword would go snicker snack all the way back. So much love to the Vorpal weapon, which we all like. But yes, Oriental Adventures. We're going to talk a little bit about that, a lot of other things as we roll through Dragon 121.
So this is based on the issue number, and I haven't looked at the date yet, but based on the issue number, this is going to be second edition Oriental Adventures.
Well, there you go. There you go. Starting to get this, and that's not my main interest. Although we're going to talk a little bit about that, but you are correct.
Because I can remember the first edition Oriental Adventures handbook coming out in late '85, early '86, might have been middle of '86 when the first edition OA book came out, and I remember everybody was all over it because they're like, ooh, we can play ninjas. And as we've noted from a much earlier Dragon magazine, it's like, dude, they've been around for a while.
Exactly.
But
so it is May of 1987.
May of 80. So we're not second edition yet then.
That's correct. It's coming out. We're going to talk about that.
Gotcha.
It's en route. And in fact, if you go back, we were skipping the April Fool's episodes, but there's actually a bit in the April 1987, the month before, there's a little bit of a mock of second edition.
Okay.
They do a lampoon of so it's expected. Everybody knows 2E is coming.
Okay. So I misunderestimated what issue number we were, how far down the line we had gotten here. I probably could have done the math and pinpointed the date a little closer. But
how much fun would that be?
Huh?
How much fun would that be?
Yeah, no kidding. It would have made me look a little smarter. So second edition is still 2 years-ish away.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's right. But people are still expecting it.
Okie doke.
So of course we always have to try to stump Brant.
Yeah.
We asked the question, what was the number one song?
So when was this? May of 80?
May 1987.
May of 87. I'm not going to drag this out too long because these episodes are starting to really, really lag. Lean on Me, Club Nouveau.
Not a bad guess. With You or With or Without You by U2.
Okay. I was going to say I knew that album was that year, but I thought the hits actually hit later in the year.
And this one, this one is a what is, and we always ask, what is the number one movie released in May of 1987? Is not the biggest movie, although it might be. Yeah, this is certainly one of the biggest movies of that year. But what was the biggest movie released in May of 1987? And I would have gotten this one. I would have gotten this one because I went to see this opening weekend.
Well, so again, opening weekend for you was 3 months before I would have gotten it over in Germany where we were at the time. So
fair point.
87? Well, Bond was on hiatus, so it wasn't a Bond flick. I'm not gonna have a clue on the movie. Let's not drag this out. What do we got?
Beverly Hills Cop 2.
2. Okay, gotcha. There was I will say this. I'm not sure I saw Beverly Hills Cop 2 for at least another year at this point. That said, the soundtrack for Beverly Hills Cop 2 was actually quite excellent.
All right.
That's the one that has Shakedown from Bob Seger on it.
Yes.
The soundtrack for Beverly Hills Cop 2 is quite excellent. Whether you like the movie or not, the tunes are good. Okay, so I've flipped ahead a couple of times here. Ghostbusters, It's a Livin'. So the Ghostbusters role-playing game. I've never played this, never even opened the box on it, but I will tell you where it did get mentioned briefly, the connection, the very brief connection that I have to it. So almost 20 years ago now, I wrote a handful of reviews for RPG.net way back when, and we have been slowly reposting those on our site, some of them under the Classic Reviews moniker. Basically, the Classic Reviews that we're running at GrogHeads are reviews written by our staffers of older games, but reviews that appeared in other places that we've worked. And we wanted to republish them at GrogHeads in case those sites ever went dark somewhere, and so that we've got as much as possible of our writing, of our bibliography all in one place. I reviewed the old early 90s big black box D&D basic set. And in it, I noted that it was possibly the single best introductory game for a brand new role player. Right? Here's a box, kid,
right.
Go figure out how to do role playing. Just because of the structure of all how it works, I've actually got that black box review set shortly after the new year to run as one of our classic reviews. Ghostbusters popped up in this context in that somebody wrote a counterpoint to that review and said, no, you're wrong, Ghostbusters is, because it's not just a really easy game to play, but it has an immediate tie-in to a media license that everybody can see is very relatable. And having never played the game, I really wasn't in a position to dispute the guy. I still, my experience has been that big black box basic D&D game was still the best one for, hand a new person a role-playing game and say, here, figure this out. So
that's absolutely hysterical.
Yeah. You ever play it? You ever messed with it?
I own it. Never played it, not one time. It was. It's hard to conceptualize given the huge failure of the reboot of Ghostbusters that was tried. But this game kind of dominated the universe, and it seemed like a great concept at the time, right? Got different people, different backgrounds. Venkman is obviously very different from Spengler, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And West End is not. There were no slouches, but it went nowhere.
Yep. All right, the Robin Hood role-playing campaign for Rollmaster. We've talked plenty about Rollmaster. Did you ever mess with this at all?
Absolutely did. Played several. This is the one form as I've said, I've never played MERPs that I can recall. But this is a Rollmaster game that I can recall playing just because it was the only thing I'd ever seen that was specifically focused on Robin Hood.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very big book, and it was very well done. But like everything else, Rollmaster, bring a slide rule, bring a cot, bring some food because it's going to be a long slog.
Yes, yeah. I I remember thumbing through this one briefly at the shelves of a game store somewhere along the way. It might have been the one in Abilene that I was in one time. Just sort of thumbing through it. Looked kind of cool, but I didn't play Rollmaster, and I didn't feel like doing stats conversions. And so I said, all right, forget it. And left it on the shelf. Okay, so here are our contents. Quick layout note. We've still got giant white boxes, but at least they're balanced giant white boxes, so it looks like they meant to do it instead of just not being able to handle transparencies. Roger Moore is our editor at this point, so Kim Mohan has moved on, and Roger's taken over. So we've got some Oriental Adventuring, so a bunch of OA work here. We've got some other features. So Game Wizards Love and Ale. There we go. We might actually get Mirth to pay attention to this episode briefly. Jeff Grubb with his regular Marvel file, and Operation Zodiac. So, space shuttle missions for agent astronauts in the top secret game. All right, and so here we have a Jim Holloway cover, giving you a little bit of information about the cover that we have. And, all right, do we need to mess with the letters column at all, or keep on trucking?
Don't.
All right. What was our something new over here? I'm just at it. One of the improvements we've made is to add a new feature to better get reader feedback. And so what do we have? On page 4, you'll find our announcements for our Overseas Military Gamers Guide. Wow.
That was my first ticked box that made me want to talk about this episode.
All right. And some stuff about Greyhawk, Dragonlance, etc., etc. All right. Let's go see what we get. So there's our Overseas Military Gamers Guide. We've talked about these before where people would post their information. And here are the games I'm willing to play and how to find me. So that's...
This is a more eclectic list than the one we saw the last time we saw this list. Now, this is obviously for those serving in the military.
Well, not necessarily. There's no way this is just the ones serving in the military.
Well, but it says, it actually says at the first paragraph, if you are a member of the American Armed Forces serving overseas.
Yeah.
And if you...
However, when you look down here, the Science Fiction Club at the University of Simon Bolivar in Venezuela, that's not U.S. military. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to guess that Tatsuhiro Ishikawa is probably not U.S. military. It's possible, but it's unlikely. And the U.S. military, the only U.S. military folks we had stationed in Sweden at the time were the embassy attaché folks and the embassy guards, because Sweden was officially neutral.
Well, I'm gonna give them credit. I just want to take this moment. We've pushed into 1987 and look at the games that the Dragon is acknowledging.
Yep. Paranoia, Pendragon, outstanding.
Yep.
Doctor Who.
Yeah. But also Recon.
Yeah.
Starfleet Battles. Well,
I think ElfQuest. ElfQuest hadn't fallen apart yet. I think if you're catering to the military, you're going to have to include Recon in there somewhere, along with T2K, because those are the only two worthwhile military RPGs out there. There were others that could be grafted into a military setting, but those are the only two that were really worth the crap as actual military games.
Agreed.
So, but your point is absolutely valid. Dragon was frequently derided as the house organ of TSR, and yet here you have them willingly helping gamers find gamers for non-TSR products, like all over the place. Space Master, Villains and Vigilante. This is half of this list is Fantasy Games Unlimited stuff. So, yeah, that's quite excellent. That's a very good point there.
Yeah, so that was this is some pretty heavy stuff, which I dare say we'd be highly unlikely to see today in Dragon. I did want to give a shout out to one letter writer, Bob Hughes from Schenectady, New York,
Is this back up a page there or down?
It's actually right after we're going to get to this battle force. The invasion begins with battle force.
Okay, so it's right after that.
I suppose I should ask. I shouldn't jump around so much. Did you play Battle Force?
I did play some Battle Force. I was 85, 6, 7, 8. I was a big BattleTech player. I think I've mentioned before I actually had a copy of Battle Droids at one point, the precursor to BattleTech. Greatly enjoyed lots of BattleTech stuff. Summer of '88 was the summer we moved back to the U.S., and we spent some time in London that summer. That's when I went to the Orc's Nest. And one of the things that I picked up there, well, a couple of things, I picked up a handful of BattleTech products while I was there. But the summer of '87 was definitely a summer of BattleTech for me. I found a copy of Battle Force, picked up both Aerotech and CityTech, picked up the Mercenaries Handbook that summer. That was a very BattleTech heavy summer for me. I spent a week or two back in the U.S. That summer visiting some grandparents, and came home with the scenario books for Fox's Teeth, the Wolf's Dragoons, for the Grey Death Legion. I think there were 4 out at the time, and I had them all, and I'm trying to remember all 4 of them. It was Fox's Teeth, Wolf's Dragoons, Grey Death Legion, and what was the one with the Black Widow?
Oh, man.
Yeah, that one. So yes, played Battle Force, played a lot of them. The only BattleTech stuff that I never really dug, that never really was a lot of fun with for me, was the Aerotech stuff that took place outside the atmosphere. That was essentially the interstellar level stuff, sort of fighting it out with the drop ships and the interstellar transports. Once you got outside the atmosphere of whatever planet, I sort of, lost interest, I guess is the best way to say it. Once you were inside the atmosphere and you were dealing with the Aerotech stuff for close air support, yeah, I was a little more interested there. So, how about you, Battle Force?
Absolutely, and this was the thing.
That's a dumb question, huh?
The whole universe around me wanted to play BattleTech. Everybody wanted to play BattleTech, and even my friends that knew I was playing these historical games, because I've been playing those historical games all along. Even those that I would try to draw them in with Avalon Hill, Starship Troopers. I could trick them into playing Waterloo or Chancellorsville or something like that. But they wanted to play BattleTech. And all of a sudden, along comes this concept of, let's do the meta battles.
Yeah.
Let's do the big battles. And we're going to play these out. And I had it, I think I still have it. I think I do. But nobody wanted to play. Yeah. Everybody loved the big soldiers. Everybody loved the man-to-man or the robot-to-robot, if you will.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to do anything but the small units.
Yeah. Because you had the minis, and the minis were cool.
Absolutely.
And as soon as you replace those minis with, a platoon-level counter on a map, the cool factor disappeared.
It did, and it just suddenly... And it was interesting because it was one of those moments that I realized the great line that I was given by indirectly by he that designed Magic the Gathering. Ultimately, it's all math.
Yes.
And when you actually... That math is exposed, the chest cavity cut open and the math exposed, suddenly everybody goes, hey, I'm just doing a math problem. I'm not having fun. So yeah, Battle Force. But you mentioned where we were with 2nd edition and where we were talking about when is this coming from. We're going to get that. The reason I picked this, by the way, has to do with 2nd edition, I should say.
Okay.
But I do want to throw out a shout to my guy, Bob Hughes. I have no idea who he is.
Okay.
He's connected to New York, who's going to write a letter on the next page.
Okay, so it starts at the bottom of this column.
Right.
So in response to somebody else's letter.
Right. This is, like we say, this is what passed for a forum these days. This is what you got, except there was a significant lag time between call and response. So
we have joked that chat rooms are real time and our forum is more turn based, but this is this is play by mail turn based right here.
I was going to say this is the campaign game.
Yeah. concerning the cleaning up of various AD&D game books. I have the following to say. If he's upset with the current state of the game, should switch over to the D&D system, although they're very similar. It could be described as semi-compatible. Two major differences. You picked this because you knew that I'm a D&D dude, right? I'm a BCMI guy, huh?
Well, no, it's because we get the first two full paragraphs in the third column.
Ah, so there we go. Literally thousands of rules, half of which are ignored. And if you don't like it, just change it.
Our voices were crying in the wilderness in the spring of 1987. We are bombarded by thousands of rules, half of which are ignored by most DMs anyway. This may be fine for those perfectionists who strive for the most perfectly realistic game, but it sacrifices an important part of the game, flexibility. If you don't like a D&D game rule, you change it. And that's it, people. 2 paragraphs. Move on.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. So all the way out from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, big shout out to Schenectady, New York. Nice job.
Well, not just through space, but through time as well.
And also, chilling to say, more than 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll hate you later for bringing that up. So, okay, we're going to skip the Bushido minis here from Ralpartha. The Game Wizards. Anything we need to discuss here with the Game Wizards?
Well, here it is. This is one of the reasons I picked this. This is Dave Cook, the man himself, sort of mapping out what was going to happen in 2nd edition. He dropped a bomb, apparently, in a previous... I've tried to find the article. He says several months ago. He puts out there a letter called Who Dies? And in it, he basically proposes what they were going to do to character classes.
Okie doke.
And he said he's going to, he's said basically it's proliferated, it's metastasized. We've got to go out with this monster that is 1st edition D&D, and we've got AD&D particularly. And we've got to clean it up, clean it out, and create this new thing that becomes, which is to some, not to me, but to some, the definitive edition of D&D, which is 2nd edition.
Okay.
And this is if you want to know what his roadmap was, and obviously we're not going to have anything approaching enough time to go through it here, but what the thought process was and what he was going to do. And I'll just point out 2 really simple issues that he raises that I think go to the heart of game design and why Dave Cook is the smart guy that he is. And it's on the 2nd page.
2nd page. All right. I was trying to scroll through a little slowly in case somebody wanted to read through some stuff.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get a little bit of reading in here, not much.
Okay. Which column am I looking for?
It's middle column.
Middle column.
And it's this column that this answer he's responding to from John Strasser.
All right. The revised game remained 100% compatible with the old. Oh, Strasser, bless your heart. As we say down here south the Mason-Dixon line.
Take your head back to the spring of 1987. It's just hard for me to say, but I was on my way to grad school. And here in the world of D&D, guys were clutching those precious 1st edition AD&D guides, saying no matter what you jerks do, make it all backwards compatible. That's an amazing statement.
Well, so here's the hilarity in all of that is that today we understand how technology bounds its way forward, that backwards compatibility at some point becomes an unattainable pipe dream. That at some point you've got to just cut the cord and say, nope, sorry, can't do it anymore. I remember 2001, 2, 3-ish, right around there. I guess it was around 2001, 2002, when Apple finally just stopped supporting pre-OS X versions of applications. There was just no way to run them. And much wailing and gnashing of teeth, and 2 years later, nobody cared anymore. People had moved on. And nowadays, we expect at some point there is a sunset on what we've got, at which point it is no longer backwards compatible. And it's clear that mentality has not yet invaded the game world at the time that Strasser is writing this question or writing this comment.
And then these were the paragraphs. There's one other reason I wanted this one, but these are the paragraphs that drew me to this conversation. If you read the last sentences of this comment, and we're going to go into the next one, but I want to start with this comment that he gives to Mr. Strasser. To many players, that's to all players, okay? This is to all players.
So this
it
is
does
right
not make
here.
sense that the worst armor classes have higher numbers.
Yeah.
Okay? Nobody in the history of D&D has thought it was a good idea, in retrospect, looking at the telescope backwards, that the lower your number, the better your armor class.
Yeah.
But his comment, however, reducing the order of the armor class would invalidate every AD&D game campaign and product in existence.
Yeah. No, what it means is you've got to add one additional step in the math for everything else, which is establish the plus-minus factor that you're going to use to invert all of these things.
Yes. So that was just delightful. But then we flip to the very next line and the very next question. I will refuse to buy any second edition books if your plan is to change everything around so that it's based on proficiencies. And Zeb Cook says in his response, and if you have to flip a couple paragraphs ahead, third column. Some of you seem to think that proficiencies would do away with character classes, whether for good or ill. This will not be the case. Character classes will and must remain, since they are the core of the game.
Yep.
D&D has fought against its class system ever since first edition. It doesn't. They don't like it because players don't like it. They don't like the limitations. And if you can tell me in what way classes are meaningful in 5th edition, I'll buy you a beer. I'll be at Origins. Check out GrogHeads Central Command.
Well, so at this point, the weapon proficiencies existed in the original Player's Handbook from 1st edition.
Yes.
At what point, so I know that at some point, the Wilderness Adventures Guide, the Wilderness Survival Guide, and Dungeoneer Survival Guides released 85, 86 time frame, maybe 86, 87, but 86 plus or minus a couple months, started to introduce the non-weapon proficiencies. Did those appear in a rule book before the survival guides? I don't think so.
No,
So-
I can't believe that.
So they probably would have been floated as a trial balloon in some other Dragon magazine somewhere along the way. But essentially, it took 6-7 years or so from the original Player's Handbook to non-weapon proficiencies becoming a canonical part of the rules. And 2nd edition made non-weapon proficiencies not necessarily. I don't know that they were ever really essential to play in 2nd edition, but certainly treated them as more than just a bolt-on, which is really how they felt in the Wilderness and Adventure Survival Guide, the Wilderness and Dungeoneer Survival Guides.
Yes.
Was that they were essentially a bolt-on. Now, I didn't play a whole lot of 3 or 3.5, so I'm not going to be able to comment intelligently on how they worked in there. I will say that the basic skills, which replaced the non-weapon proficiencies in 4th edition, worked well within the context of 4th edition. However, I'm not going to sit there and make a great argument with those people that argue that 4th edition isn't really D&D. So,
right. Well, we know what happened. Between 3rd and 4th edition, a guy by the name of Jason Bullman went off and went, okay, I'm going to create D&D 3.5, and that becomes Pathfinder.
Yeah. Well, 3.75.
Well, and as a matter of fact, he'll tell you, if you talk to him, that he went home that day and wrote down on his notepad D&D 3.5 before 3.5 existed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And created what became that's how mad this guy was.
Yeah. Well,
so it's
I was always intrigued with the business ideas that Dancy put into place for 3. I didn't play enough of the game to, I did a couple of one-shots here and there, but I didn't play a whole lot of 3 at the time. I was rediscovering my board gameness at the time and didn't really mess. I've got the couple of the basic books here. 4, I rather quite enjoyed playing. And honestly, if you just wanted to sit down and play a pickup game, I would pick 4 over any of the other editions. Just for a one-shot pickup game like at a convention or something. If you want to sit down and run a long-running campaign with me, and we're not going to do a BECMI campaign, I would want 2nd edition.
Yes.
And I don't think, I suspect most folks that are north of the 30 line would probably want 2nd edition as well.
So. I play 1st edition because it's what I learned and what I remain comfortable with.
Yeah.
But I certainly, that was my point. I think that for many people, 2nd edition becomes normative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's and there's certainly a lot of books out there, and there's certainly a lot of lit. And it benefits greatly from the fact that there is an immense amount of literature that is produced for 2nd edition. So it's not like, I honestly think, I guess I don't know how much people play, but unless you're playing D&D an awful lot, you are never, ever going to grind through the incredible amount of support that is created for 2nd edition.
Well, and not just that, but with 2nd edition, you don't just have the Forgotten Realms campaign and then the other offshoot adventures that were kind of the standalones within the numbering contexts that had started with the original 1st edition. So, modules like I6, right? Where they have those out there. But the sheer number of game worlds and modules specific to them, like Planescape, Dark Sun, Ravenloft, Spelljammer. You could run a 4-year-long Spelljammer campaign with folks just meeting twice a week, or once every 2 weeks there. You could run a 4-year-long Spelljammer campaign just with the published, content, and Spelljammer wasn't a particularly prolific game world. So
no, So I was fascinated to see this little look into, obviously, one of the lead guys, Dave Cook. I've met once, I think. A real one of the fathers of the game, of this particular edition, how he was thinking. This is a fascinating article because it goes into, as you observed, months before the fact, having this conversation about where they were going with what would become, again, what is for many the dispositive version of D&D.
I wanted to zoom in on this little quote right here. The best way to avoid edition 3 is to make allowances for changes. Really, I do want to avoid having to do a 3rd edition.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, so I will say this, the gap from 1st edition to 2nd edition was a decade and change. Not much. I mean, it was 11 years, 12 years. The gap between 2nd and 3rd was 13, 14 years. When was 3rd edition? Early 2000s.
Right.
But, 3rd edition was, the gap between 4th and 5th obviously was pretty short, just because of the dislike people had for 4th. which is unfortunate. 4th is a great game. I get it, right? I understand the people that don't agree with it being a D&D game. So, all right. So we're still into some. Hey, look, Fantasy Games Unlimited ad. We're still into some discussions of this. So is there anything else on this page you wanted to?
Nope. Keep on rolling now.
All right, let's keep on rolling. Hey, Car Wars 2037. So they jumped ahead in the chronology briefly here.
This is always the age of Car Wars.
Okay.
Yeah, this is very much the heart of Car Wars. Although I am delighted if you take a look over to your right, I don't know why you're showing me a carbureted engine.
Yeah, since they're all power plants.
Right. This was an immense source of confusion, and I have never directly put this to Steve Jackson the many times I've met him to say why didn't you do gas from jump?
Yeah.
Because he eventually does with dual track, but no, this is just the deluxe edition of Car Wars, which in various versions is still essentially the version that you'll buy at your friendly local game store.
Well, and I'll tell you, probably one of the reasons why you don't start off doing fuel, if you can do power plants where you don't have to deal with fuel, is to avoid it becoming a game that's an exercise in logistics management.
But all those games, it's tactical, not strategic.
Yeah.
Like I said,
the one thing that I will chuckle about this image here, that shotgun right there,
yep.
that is a ridiculously short action for a pump action shotgun.
I was wondering about that. It's like,
there's no way you can rack a shell with a slide that's that relatively short. Now you can have a barrel that is that short, but to have a slide action that gives you this little play with a handle that long, there's no way you're racking a shell.
I agree with. Explain to me which human being has a bicep on their forearm.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm looking at that going, I got pretty good forearms, but that dude is got ripped forearms.
Well, that's because that the model for this was obviously Brian Bosworth on steroids. So
right, everybody decided. Brian Bosworth would be the Lord of the Wasteland.
That's Boz. I mean, there's no two ways around it. That's him.
Hey, Brant.
Yeah.
There, you just crossed that 30 line we've talked about before.
Yes.
That's probably the 40 line, actually.
Maybe. However, look, kids, go turn on ESPN, go watch a 30 for 30, because Boz doesn't just show up in his own episode in the one about him. He also shows up in the one about Bo Jackson, and he shows up in the first one about the Miami Hurricanes in the U. So,
yep.
So Boz is all over those 30 for 30s.
Good note.
All right, Oriental Adventures. How much of where are we going to stop and talk about stuff here?
Well, we're going to blow through this first one because this is Ms. Barbara Curtis. I don't know who you are. All due respect, this is an originally dumb article. I just do not like naming articles.
I'm totally okay with naming articles where you may need to give me a list of names for a culture that I might not already be familiar with if I want them to sound culturally correct. But don't give me a randomization table, because tell me what they mean. Like, tell me.
That's exactly. This is
Ibarra does not mean 39, right? You're not teaching me to count, and to simply alphabetize a randomness title is just dumb.
With all love to Jomini, who is obviously just today released a pretty amazing mod for Field of Glory 2, and who wrote one of the great mods for Pike and Shot. This is one of the richest cultures on the planet.
Yeah.
And you've reduced it to, give me a D100 there, or D100 there, and next thing you know, you got a character. No.
Yeah. Tell me what
about it.
Well, and that's the thing, because names are so descriptive and evocative in most Eastern cultures. Give me the meanings of the names. That matters so much more to me than some random die roll for, what do we got? 10 flipping tables of names. There was one in it's probably in the 70s, maybe in the 80s, but I think it's in the 70s that has Saxon flavored Scandinavian names, and it does actually give you meanings of names and prefixes and suffixes, so you can put together your own names that, you know, the wise woman sort of name or whatever, you know. I mean, you can put together a meaning for it. That would have been so much more useful than just a table of stuff here.
Yes.
So okay, sage advice. We need to hang out on sage advice or keep trucking.
We really don't, because this is all just a bunch of questions about the rules, the interface between Oriental classes, Oriental Adventure classes. And by the way, you know, let it be said academically, Oriental is kind of a bad word these days.
Yeah. All right. Robotech ads. Let's keep moving.
Oh,
Deadliest perfume. Do we need deadliest perfume?
This one was kind of interesting because I think that the evocative lotus, but again, I wanted this for my 19th century campaign, my Frank Chadwick inspired Space in 1889.
We're still 2 years away from that being released at this point. You know?
I understand. Man, God, that's so weird.
A world in which Space 1889 doesn't yet exist?
Yeah, I know. It's hard to imagine. I mean, you and I have talked about this. I think we talked about it on the GrogHeads, that you can now get the entire corpus of Space 1889 for, I think, 50 cents or something.
Yeah, something ridiculous on sale at Drive-Thru-RPG.
Right, and so, to me, that's where I want to put my list. But I actually read through this one, and I thought it was pretty interesting. It was some good information, and if you want to work lotus plants into your adventure, which I realize is a kind of a one-shot, this is a good article. I liked it.
The layout nerd in me is going to note the mismatch in the transparency box up here. It's cool that you want to do white on pink, but let's make the pinks match.
Yeah, and somebody sent you that super. But the other thing is, okay, now you're doing that to me. Who cropped this?
Yeah, somebody that didn't do it well. Especially not when there's a mountain of pink space up here. Let's drag the whole thing up, and then let's expand the graphic to fill the space.
I don't know who they are, but I know it's somebody who didn't know how to crop something.
The sad thing is, the layout people are probably in the credits back on, page 3, but we're not going to go back and look so we can embarrass them. This Any Win role-playing system ad over here,
Yep.
I remember seeing this ad multiple times and reading through it and going, this is somebody typed up all their homebrew campaign notes and just published it as a system. And I have absolutely no problem with people doing that, because God knows that's pretty much how every one of them started. I think probably of the major game worlds out there, probably the only one that started as a deliberate attempt to build a game world instead of simply exploding out of their own, somebody else's existing campaigns, I think was Dragonlance, wasn't it?
Yep.
Because Dragonlance was an intentional creation designed to put dragons back in front and center in the game system, in the game world. I think everything else, Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms, obviously famous as being somebody's campaigns that then, they expanded and published. Mystara obviously grew up through all of its modules over the years, and the shepherding of Bruce Hurd. But that's where all these things come from. I think Dragonlance was like the only one that was intentionally created as a game world. Eberron was famously somebody's, homebrew
D&D campaign.
Yeah, their own campaign. And so that's what this struck me as, but it just didn't seem intriguing enough for me to want to spend money on it.
Well, you know what turned me off, and I'll be very specific. When the best you can do is to call your game world Fireland.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much done with you.
Well, that and the fifth grade pencil sketch here.
Well, but you know what? That's kind of evocative of the good old school D&D books. We've talked about that before. Yes. But here's the thing. Whenever you go to Origins, whenever you go to Gen Con, there's a company out of La Crosse, Wisconsin by the name of Chimera Hobbies.
Yeah.
And they're the place, if you've been to Gen Con or Origins, that offers buy one, get 3 free.
Yep. Titan Games used to do that a lot too.
That actually goes up a little bit as the con goes on, because they don't want to go home with stuff. And the point that I always make about that joint as I walk around it, I call it the Boulevard of Broken Dreams.
Yeah.
Somebody had an idea to do any when. And this was their thing. And everybody that they cared about, their friends, their family, their dads, their moms, their lovers, they all said, oh, I love your game world. Build your game world. Publish a book. Show us your book. And it eventually winds up at Chimera Hobbies.
Yeah.
Again, to quote my buddy Jason Blumen, the discoverer of Pathfinder, there are more men who have walked on the moon than have made a successful living publishing games.
Yeah.
and that's why he prides himself on, I've done okay. And, you know, I respect any when. This is obviously somebody's dream, somebody's vision, but I just don't see something like this breaking out of somebody's basement.
Yeah. And look, I will fully admit that I have quite a decent handful of those games from either Chimera or Titan Games used to do the same thing as well. I've got a copy of Dawnforge over here somewhere. I've got
Sweet Jesus.
Sovereign Stone, Forbidden Kingdoms. My love for obscure fantasy game books goes back long before me discovering those guys at game conventions. And that's why I joke that I might be the only guy out there that has in his collection Duel and Twerps and Swordbearer and Isgarth and Justifiers.
Nice.
Like, my buddy Nick Parenti over in Maryland, who also collects obscure stuff, he probably has more weird stuff than I do. But for the longest time, he didn't have Justifiers because I ended up sending him some of my stuff at one point. So I was a little ahead of him there briefly. I used to love going through those because for me, a lot of the fun is reading those books, reading the source books, reading the game books. It's sort of a social studies book for a place that never existed, and those were entertaining to me. And so when I could go to Chimera or Titan and plunk down a 10 spot and leave with 4 or 5 hardcovers, yeah, I'm okay with that, right? It's sure. Good reading, and I got my $2 worth out of each of those books, and then I hand them off to somebody else and let them enjoy them. I don't feel like it was money wasted. Even if I never played the game, I had fun reading them. So.
Sure. So we're going to scroll down just a couple more pages here. And I get to do my...
I just wanted to ogle the T2K thing here real quick. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. That's where I'm heading.
That's where we're heading. Air Lords of the Ozarks. So we're going to go...
Hey, Frank. Or I should say, hey, Mr. Chadwick, whom I have nothing... folks, allow me just to take 1 second to say Frank Chadwick is a god to me. This is the guy that does Twilight 2000, but more importantly, he does Volley and Bayonet. He does Space 1889. He is a genius.
He did Command Decision, didn't he?
Didn't
he do Command Decision?
Command Decision. And I'm going to back his Kickstarter, which is coming up in the very near future for through Victory Point Games for his gigantic East Front game.
Yep. Because
it will be great, I am sure. And check out GrogNards for previews and all that other stuff. Or GrogHeads.com, I should say. But Frank, Mr. Chadwick, sir, what the actual hell?
Yeah.
I have these books.
The post-apocalyptic steampunk in Arkansas. There we go.
I want to know what, Pabst Blue Ribbon infused Long Night of Gaming gave us Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, Air Lords of the Ozarks, followed by Gateway to the Spanish Main in the world of Twilight 2000.
Well, I will say this, that in a world in which RPGs were cheap and plentiful, the performance of airships is likely to be inflated. Yes, I will.
All right. You need to have a timeout. This may have to last about 5 minutes of Brant silence. Shame on you.
We moving on at this point?
Mm-hmm. Telling Mom. Now, next page. I spit soda when I saw this the first time.
The DC Heroes game or the King's Earth highly detailed tactical?
King's Earth. Kids, can you imagine a highly detailed tactical PBM system? What is that like? What sort of hell is that?
They're not simply varied troop types and armor and mount. They are extremely varied.
Yes, but also apparently the ability to spell sieges was beyond their capacity.
Yeah, well, I before E except after C and a whole lot of exceptions.
I don't know. But what is a highly detailed tactical play-by-mail system? I want to play this. I demand this. Can somebody please evolve this nonsense? Because I want to mail in a letter. What is it? What am I waiting for? I strike Brant a blow for making a bad airship joke. And now I wait 4 days for my letter to come back?
I will, the part that I always chuckle about whenever I see people talking about a highly detailed tactical anything system, look, let's face it, like, as gamers, one of the things that we always do is we always want to create our own games.
Sure.
And I remember when I was in 6th or 7th grade, there was a 4th or 5th grader who was totally nuts about gaming, and he was very, very eager to show us his latest and greatest creation. And I remember that one of the charts that he had put in place, whenever people talk about things being highly detailed to an unnecessary degree, not unlike the chart that we saw that was supposed to simplify combat a couple episodes ago, this dude had a cross-reference for attack or defense bonuses or penalties based on the height of the participants in the battle.
Awesome.
So if you were 6'3" attacking a critter that was 4'7", this was your bonus. So
I'm just gonna say, what? Highly detailed, and I'm waiting for the mail.
Yeah.
No, not this guy. Let's just say that. All right, moving on.
Life and Death of a Castle.
Great article. Not the reason that I'm here, but it actually tells a neat story. And who's the author? Dave Cook.
Yeah. And who was the layout guy? We don't know, but we're going to make fun of him.
That's you. Go nuts.
I mean, it's a pixelated paste up. You pixelated your enlargement, couldn't get the point sizes correct on the lines, and couldn't be bothered to make a transparency out of the background, which is how we can tell how damn pixelated this is. And look, here's the thing. Like, I get that I've got 20-odd years of being a graphic designer underneath my belt at this point, but I got to think that when I was a kid flipping through these issues, I just didn't care. I mean, I don't... But that is...
I don't know. I think the standard has come up generally as the technology has improved.
I think that helps, but I get that, you know, as a kid, maybe I looked at that and thought that was intentional. Maybe as a kid, I just didn't care. But now as an adult, I see that and I just go, oh, there's like a gag reflex.
Sure.
And I get that I'm holding people to a standard that is probably unrealistic given the difference in changes, right? It's like trying to figure out why a muscle car can't meet 2000's EPA emission standards and MPG ratings. I get that I'm applying an unrealistic standard, but the technology existed at the time to fix this problem, and they simply chose not to use it. That's
and you know what? And you know what that may be.
I know the technology existed at the time because I was learning to use it at the time, and part of my question in all of this is, did the people doing it simply not know how, given what a relatively new technology it was? Like, this was the actual upper limits of their ability to do this, not of the technology to do it. So,
and I don't know the answer to that, but we certainly do actually have some pictures of actual Japanese castles.
Yes, and well laid out and well organized. It'd be nice to have them a little bigger, but I get it. We got to fit the text around there. But at least it's a solid layout. Aside from this whole pixelation crap happening up here, so
and really good article that mixes. Hey, all right, I'm in an Oriental adventure. What's different about a Japanese castle than a European castle?
yeah,
You know what are where are they located? I read through all this whole thing. You know, what's the where are they located? How are they built? Who will defend them? Really solid article if this is your thing to do.
yeah.
Well, nice piece. Well done. Top shelf history. Oh, I don't know the history. I can't judge it, but it seems solid. And it would be. This is the sort of thing that I find very useful. It's something I don't know much about, and it would give me a good base of knowledge. Should, for whatever reason, one of my players want to go off and have an Oriental adventure.
Okie dokie. All right, let's Living Steel.
Oh God.
Yeah, okay, we'll keep moving. A bunch of Palladium stuff.
Yeah.
So I will say, when I first saw this ad, at last, the Palladium RPG book of Adventures on the High Seas, who was actually waiting for, oh my God, I can't wait to get Palladium out in the water?
Frank Chadwick.
Okay, sure.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's an audience here. There is clearly an audience here.
Oh, yeah.
Because they ran for a long time.
They're still in business.
Yes. I was not it.
Yeah, I can't knock them for still being in business. Clearly, they were providing something people wanted.
You know, frankly, most aren't.
Okay.
You ready?
I don't know. Am I?
No. Here we go. Okay, this is not. It was never my intention, nor do I ever want to, because frankly, I do enough politics in my real life job. I'm not getting into politics, folks. It is, and I'm certainly not going to attempt to trod the absurd minefield that is sex roles in gaming, period. Because what's a nightmare?
Yeah.
But I was shocked at this article.
Well, but not only that, look, there was just a big kerfuffle in one of the wargaming groups on Facebook over the. Oddly enough, the kerfuffle blew up within the past week of us recording this over an article that was originally posted well over a year ago about gender representation within wargaming specifically. There was quite a few blow-ups about representations of and treatment of women in gaming over the past 4 or 5 years. A combination of Gamergate with Zoe and Anita Sarkeesian and all the other people out there having their very public spats with the online trolls. There was the Tracer Rounds article that I wrote talking about women in gaming. There was the big fallout with the Malifaux stuff. But let's face it, the majority of those blow-ups over the last 5-ish years are happening because I don't want it to sound like I'm placing blame anywhere, but they wouldn't be happening if we didn't have an increasing representation of women in the gaming world. And
Correct.
At the time this article was written, I think I knew one woman that actually played any kind of role-playing games at all. And at this point, so this is 87, I'm 6-7 years into role-playing, 6 years into being a role player at this point. And I'm on like my 5th town in which I'm dealing with role players, and there was one woman in all of that. I say woman, one girl, right? I mean, I was in high school. There was one girl that was a role player in all of this time. And so it doesn't surprise me that something like this might come across very clunky and awkward, given that it was by guys for guys. And
okay,
a woman's perspective would be sort of almost an afterthought.
You have just yarded my point. This is May of 1987. Who the F is this for?
Yeah.
Who's this for?
Yeah. It's for other guys. It
almost has to be.
I'm willing to bet that the Venn diagram overlap of folks who really enjoyed this article with guys who logged into AOL chat rooms in 1995 pretending to be women is almost a perfect overlap. I mean, we have no way of ever finding that out because even if we could time travel and try and compare those two audiences, nobody's ever going to admit to it. But that's what's going on there. I mean,
this is so bizarre. Because I am let me be completely clear. I am very happy that women have joined us in gaming. My wife would have been 13 at this time, and she was coming into gaming. She played a little bit of 2nd edition. She certainly played a lot of Dragonlance, at least according to what she's told me. But I was around. I was going to Gen Con for years by this point.
Yeah.
And there was not a sufficient corpus of women to make this anything other than really, really weird.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. If we linger on this too much longer, we're going to get ourselves in trouble.
Right. I'm just saying, this here, weird. And what makes it weirder? Second page. Sorry. Second page. Middle column. At the bottom. Skills. Non-weapon proficiencies.
That's spell descriptions. Hold on. You want skills? That's honor awards. Hold on. I may not be on the page you want me to be on. That's the nope. That's
I'm on
spells.
page 41. Page 41.
Page 41. Spells usable by level. What am I after here?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the PDF. Take a look at page 39, middle column.
Okay. Non-weapon proficiencies.
Number
Brewer,
2.
masseuse.
Uh-huh.
Dance,
Seriously?
juggling. Flower arranging. Etiquette, they forgot to bold.
Yeah. Okay. I'm done. The back of my head exploded.
Yeah.
And yes, by the way, we do have the titles, which we've talked about, for geishas.
Yeah. Well, hang on, just real quick. I just want to note that until I zoomed in to see what it specifically said, the flash puff spell right here.
Yeah.
Zoomed out and reading it from afar, I thought it said flesh puff.
You're not allowed to keep going because you said I was supposed to stop.
All right, we're moving on. Here's the Genin, the single class ninja, because we didn't already have the ninja show up like 100 issues ago. But hey, here he is updated.
This is because they decided they wanted to get out of dual classing.
I guess. All right. Here's some more forum info.
Yep.
An index to advertisers. That was always nice in case you needed to know where to find your advertisers.
Yeah.
The Sun Dragon Castle Adventure.
Just want to say, liked it a lot.
That's a nice looking map there on the left.
It is. It is top quality.
That is a solid drawing there.
This sort of thing is so money. And I've thought, and I've been poking around. I don't remember anything like this for the Croc de Chevalier or any of the great Western castles. This was a first step towards what was really a later, higher standard for this sort of thing. This is great.
Yeah.
This is absolutely great.
All right, we've got a short story we're going to move on from because otherwise we're going to be bogged down into making jokes about mirth.
Love and ale.
All roads to gaming fun lead to Milwaukee.
Okay, there's 3B for me. Folks, let's just linger here. Let's just absorb this, shall we?
Let's not linger for too long because we're an hour into this episode.
I understand, but I just I remember. And the crazy thing is, this is actually a map of Milwaukee, but out to scale, Milwaukee is really teeny on this map because if you get as far, if you look in the background, as Oak Creek, that's Milwaukee County. But no, folks, remember,
you would be the expert.
there was a day when the greatest 4 days in gaming was right in my backyard. They were special days indeed.
Yeah. We're still got our fiction going here. The Marvel file from
there you go,
Jeff Grubb. All right. So Ms. Marvel,
yeah.
fairly interesting backstory that we're not going to have a whole lot of time to delve into. But it is nice to see Jeff Grubb still honchoing the superhero column here.
Yep.
All right, there's Fireland. There it is for any win.
It's a great, it's so strange. All right, you're gonna have to draw this line. You're the better judge of these things than I am. Where is the age line on the great magazine Heavy Metal?
Oh, it's right around me. It's probably around the mid-40s.
Okay, so you got to be mid-40s to grok how seminal and important Heavy Metal was.
Yeah.
Okay, first thing, rule number 1, don't use swastikas. Knock it off. Never. Unless you're actually putting it on an actual historical vehicle, don't use it in your aesthetic.
Just so we can note where that came from. There it is.
Just don't do that. I know it was an ancient symbol that meant something very positive, actually. It doesn't anymore.
No.
Now it's bad. Don't do it. Well, I'm making a point. Your point sucks.
Yeah, you're not taking that one back.
No takesy backsies. Swastika wrecked for all people for all time.
Yeah, you don't get to reclaim that one.
Yeah, but the second thing is, this is so heavy metal.
Yes, it very much is.
Movie. I will watch that movie on the drop of a hat. I love this. I love this. Absent the swastika, which I hate. Absent the swastika, I love this ad so much. I want a blacklight poster of it on my wall.
There you go.
And that's another thing that probably you have to be at least, 40 to understand?
The blacklights? Yeah.
Yeah.
TSR previews. I'm betting second edition isn't in here.
No, sure isn't.
But we do have M4, so the BECMI world is still running there. The I-13 Adventure Pack with all those independent intermediate level adventures. The Onslaught game, SPI.
Thank you. Look at that. There will be, at some point in the new year, they'll be coming to the GrogHeads a review of the new Battle of Britain game. This was a weird time. We're heading into the era of the ownership of TSR by the venture capitalist who seized it out from under Gary Gygax.
Yeah, the balloons.
And who, under her headspersonship, put out
Lorraine.
some pretty cool war games.
Yep. Darkwalker on Moonshae, one of the Forgotten Realms books. Niles' Forgotten Realms novels actually weren't too bad.
Yep.
Laser Tag Adventure books. There you go.
Somebody thought that was a good idea.
Your venture capitalist guys. The B1 through 9 In Search of Adventure super module. That was a collected collected softcover book. That interestingly enough includes absolutely none of B1.
Which is so bizarre, but mine is autographed.
Oh, there you go. Douglas Niles was a busy dude because he's over here on H3, the Bloodstone Wars. He's up here on the Onslaught game. He's down here on Darkwalker on Moonshae. He was a busy guy.
Yep.
He had his thumbs in a lot of pies. And Jeff Grubb, when he wasn't busy doing Marvel superhero stuff, was doing the Manual of the Planes.
Accurate.
Another busy dude. All right. Roll of books. Any good books in this one?
One particular note. Little-known guy, page 2.
Okay.
Little guy by the name of George R.R. Martin.
Oh, hey, look, the wild cards.
Which went off, by the way, to the Steve Jackson GURPS wild cards. It's actually a great supplement. But yeah, he'd go on to you do some slightly more popular things.
I have the first 2 collected, I guess trade paperback would be the format, but short story collections of wild cards, the wild cards 1 and 2. And I think 2 is where they started introducing some other people writing stories in the wild cards world. That great concept, but fairly uneven execution in its storytelling. So, hey, Recon. There we go.
Dig it.
Operation Zodiac. So it wasn't enough that we had the travesty that was Moonraker. Now we want to allow you to recreate Moonraker.
And that was the amazing part as I just glanced past that for about a second and a half. It was the, seriously, you really want to have Jaws and Moonraker and all that stuff. All right. Well,
that was the amazing part to you. It wasn't the fact that we've got a Moonraker ripoff written by a guy named Roger Moore.
Yes.
All right. Moving on. Look, we're advertising for another company's house magazine in Dragon, which just tells you what a flagship it was.
Isn't that a thing? Isn't that a thing?
That's crazy. All right, there's our profile. So we've got Mikey, we've got La Spud, Barbara Young. We're going to move on.
I just want to make a quick comment along this line.
Yes.
Hey, folks, if you're doing a serious trade periodical, don't use your clever nicknames in the write-up. Nobody's going to remember any of that stuff.
All right. Anything in the Gamer's Guide you want to call attention to?
Well, we actually got a shout-out from a guy, didn't we? Talking about the Dice Tower. That
yes.
He'd actually used that.
And I totally forgot to put the picture of mine in there, so I'll try to remember to go back and edit that.
That was actually pretty cool that this guy actually used that
specific
to create his first Dice Tower. So big salute out there. But no, there's nothing overly special here other than, yes, once again, we have more PBM games. Still not out of the world yet.
Still not out of it yet. There's our convention calendar. Anything fun on our convention calendar here?
Oh, we're going to find some Origins.
Nauticon, GameX, VCon, RagCon, the Dallas Fantasy Fair. There's the BayCon.
Yep.
I love it. Indicates a Canadian convention.
Here's a question. Can you go to the next page?
I'm on the next page.
With Dual Track?
Oh, sorry.
By Scott. An adventure game book?
Yes.
By none other than Scott Herring?
Well,
Look who's published by. Look who's published by.
TSR?
I had never heard of it.
Well, now you have. See, the ad did what it was supposed to do. It made you aware of something that you were not otherwise aware of.
Fair. I'm going to find this. I'm assuming this is a choose-your-own adventure?
I would check with Banzai Cat because odds are better than 50-50 he owns it. It had Car Wars on the cover. Odds are pretty good he's got it.
That's amazing to me.
Yeah. So there's Origins, and this one was in Baltimore.
And over on the right, by the way, we have a very good con. Emperor's Birthday Celebration. Very nice.
Oh, there we are. Okie doke.
Celebrating my guy Napoleon. Well done.
Yes. We have BatCon. Excuse me, Batman. I am headed to the BatCon.
What are you going to do? PolyCon and MapleCon.
All right. There is Elmore's Snarf Quest. Still going strong. Some Dragon Mirth. There we go. If it weren't for archers, my dental hygiene would be shot.
There you go.
Okie doke. Lawn ornaments cheap. Okay. Medusa selling lawn ornaments cheap.
Yep. Good gag. Good gag.
Good gag. All right. Wormy's still around. Here are. I gotta throw some love down for the Gazetteers, and then we'll get out of here because this is the interior of the back cover. This is when the Gazetteers first started appearing. And these are the ones that took the Mystara game world from being simply kind of a curiosity of a map at the, in X1 that was merely there to get you down to the Isle of Dread to becoming one of the more detailed game worlds out there. And it was because of the Gazetteers that game world expanded the way it did. the level of detail in those gazetteers for each of those areas, those territories, is just obscenely ridiculous. Those things were mapped out at 8 miles to a hex.
So crazy.
And 87 was the year they started appearing. This was when they first started appearing, was with Gaz-1 with Carmicos, and then blowing up from there. And so what do we have over here? We've got Ilarum, Glantry, and Erendi were the next 3 after that. And so here they are. These are not actually the covers that they ended up with, because the Glantry cover is a little different than this. And I'm pretty sure the Erendi cover was as well. But that's them. That's where the BECMI Mystara game world totally exploded. Of interest, at least to me, but probably not to anybody other than me. AD&D, particularly with 2nd edition, we already mentioned it earlier, the game world's completely exploded, right? They launched Forgotten Realms. They had, it's not they launched Forgotten Realms. They sort of, Forgotten Realms became the flagship world for 2nd edition. They updated Greyhawk to 2nd edition. They launched Planescape, Spelljammer, Dark Sun, and then Ravenloft as its own standalone world. Did I miss any? I probably missed. Oh, Birthright. Birthright was in there.
Birthright. Yep, that's what I was thinking of. Birthright.
Yeah. So they and then all of the Forgotten Realms offshoots, like the Oriental Adventures stuff, like the Maztica offshoot. The BECMI game world had one game world, and that was Mystara, and that was it. And that's the and I don't know if it was just because there just wasn't enough market room for more than one, or if they just realized Mystara was so damn good there was no point in trying to compete with it. I'm going to subscribe to that. One of these days we'll ask Bruce. I know how to get a hold of Bruce and ask him. I'm friends with him on Facebook. I'll just shoot him a note. Hey, Bruce, why didn't they ever do this? And the answer is probably because they've been trying to kill BECMI as a rule system for a long time already. But there was never a second game world for the BECMI series. Everything was built into Mystara somehow. So, and why not when you've got a game world that good? Here's our MERP ad, and then these are our fold-ups.
And that's the part that I was wondering if your piece was going to have here.
I've got them.
It's pretty cool.
Yep,
pretty cool.
There you go. You could cut out and assemble a dragon, and there are the referees' maps for the Sun Dragon Castle.
They're nice. These were nice. I would have.
Pretty neat.
I tell you, there was one of the great expansions not expansions, but box sets for 2nd edition D&D is, of course, Castles.
Yes.
And I've got 2 sets just because I wanted that much wall. and I would have, had I been running an Oriental Adventure, I would have cut and glued the heck out of this. So this is very, very nice.
There we go. All right. Very cool. We're over an hour. My wife's probably wondering what happened to me because I came out here, almost 2 hours ago. Well, I thought you were going to be ready to go, 20 minutes before we actually started.
Sorry about that.
No, this was cool. This was neat to see with one that I didn't know anything about going into because you just sort of pulled the rabbit out of the hat there. So that was fun.
No, this is a great episode. I mean, yeah, the Oriental Adventures piece, some pieces are weird, but I think, especially if you take the minute to read through, and there's episodes around this one, issues around this one that are well worth reading. If you want to know where 2nd edition came from and how D&D, this game that came out of nowhere and took over fandom, took over nerddom, and how it evolved and how it changed, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We probably only have another 1 or 2 episodes before we hit the new year, and we sort of put a pause on this to get back to the GrogCast. In that time, we would love feedback from the folks that are actually watching any of these, whether you're leaving the feedback over at thepiazza.org over in from our UK website, or on Facebook, or in our forums, or just directly on the article pages where we leave these. We've got 1 or 2 of these left before we're gonna hit a pause on them. And honestly, this was always conceived as a science project. We just thought this would be kind of fun to do, just for us. and I've enjoyed it. I've had a good time with it.
Me too.
What I don't know is how much longer we're going to continue this, just because we have other things pulling at us, like getting back to the podcast. So we need some feedback from you, our listener, our audience, our viewer. I guess they're not just listeners. Talk to us. What do you want? Do you want us to keep going? Do you want us to just punt? If you want us to tweak things, how would you want us to tweak things? Please tell us. Not guaranteeing we're going to listen, but don't let that stop you from telling us. So, and we'll see where it goes after this. So, cool. This was neat. I think we're going to call it.
All right. Well, take care, everybody.